In the final years of the Cold War, secret missions were carried out across the world, missions unknown even to high-ranking officers. But one of them was buried in silence more than any other. A silent assault on a remote monastery near the Chinese border, said to be guarding an unknown phenomenon. This case was never recorded in official documents, yet the remaining clues reveal a dark truth. Today we uncover the secret of Operation Silent Monastery. In the early 1970s, when the Soviet Union was still a global superpower, agents of the Soviet Security Agency, a secretive and powerful organization, were sent on a highly classified mission. The details of this mission were never officially revealed. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 2013, a former Russian military archive worker anonymously handed documents to an Estonian journalist named Thomas Kair. Kair, who had spent years researching Cold War cases, discovered that some documents mentioned an operation near the Chinese border with no official name. On certain pages, it was marked with the initials OSM. Among the documents, the scientific team sent to the area described an unusual phenomenon. They recorded sounds below the human hearing range, detected only by special devices. Even stranger, these sounds had a pattern like a heartbeat, with regular intervals, as if coming from a living but dormant entity. The researchers wrote in their report, "These sounds are not like language or music. They have a living structure, perhaps like breathing in another dimension." At 4:12 a.m. local time, the Soviet Security Agency's Special Operations Team, led by Major Anatoly Gurov, reached the main gate of a monastery through a narrow valley in cold, snowy weather. The monks, though calm, firmly blocked their entry. After 30 minutes of arguments and threats, Gurov ordered a forced entry. But what awaited them was not a simple religious structure. In the heart of the monastery, they found an underground chamber unlike any Tibetan architecture. A narrow path led downward, lined with smooth black stone walls that could not be carved and showed no signs of human tools. The light from torches was swallowed up. Even flashlights could only illuminate a few meters ahead. Gurov's team cautiously entered the underground corridor. The cold, damp air in the chamber seemed to breathe, though no breeze could be felt. One soldier, carrying a recording device, suddenly stopped. "Major, it's that sound again. It's getting stronger." Gurov looked at the device. Lines on the screen moved up and down in an unusual rhythm, like a heartbeat speeding up. At the end of the corridor stood a massive wall, covered in carvings that resembled no known language. Unlike the smooth surrounding walls, these carvings seemed hand-etched, but not with ordinary tools. One of the team's scientists, Professor Igor Kuznetsov, an archaeology expert, approached the wall cautiously. These looked like a map of something, not of the earth or the sky, something else. Suddenly, a monk who had silently followed them spoke to the Russians in broken language. "You must not touch it. He is still sleeping." Gurov turned to the monk angrily. "Who is he? What are you talking about?" But the monk only shook his head and stared at the ground. At that moment, the recording device began playing a sound no one expected, incomprehensible words, but with a tone that seemed to form directly in the listener's mind. The young soldier carrying the device shouted in fear, This is talking to me." Gurov ordered the team to retreat, but it was too late. The wall in front of them began to tremble, and a cold blue light seeped through tiny cracks. Kuznetsov, still near the wall, said in a trembling voice, This is not a door. It's a lock." The air in the underground chamber was heavy, as if the black walls swallowed not only light, but also sound and even human will. Major Anatoly Gurov, a man who had faced death in covert operations in Siberia and Eastern Europe, felt a deep doubt for the first time, but he could not show this to his team. His soldiers, now staring at him in silence, waited for an order that would decide the course of this strange mission. Professor Igor Kuznetsov, the archaeologist and only civilian in the team, stood by the massive wall. With trembling fingers, he pointed to the stone carvings. "Major, these are not random. They have a pattern, like a code or a message. But not for us." Gurov approached with a frown. "For who? The Chinese?" Kuznetsov shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe for no one, or for something we haven't seen yet." Gurov recalled Moscow's orders. Their mission seemed simple: investigate reports of suspicious activity near the China-Tibet border based on vague information from unknown sources. There were rumors of secret Chinese experiments, perhaps even weapons using unknown technology. But Gurov, who had navigated the Soviet security agency's bureaucracy for years, knew nothing was as it seemed. Moscow was hiding something, and now, in this underground chamber, he felt that this something was far bigger than a spy game between the Soviets and China. Suddenly, a loud sound like breaking glass echoed through the chamber. The crack in the wall grew larger, and the blue light now illuminated the entire hall. Ivanov, still holding the device, shouted, "Major, the device is shutting down. It's shutting itself off." Gurov ran to him and grabbed the device. The screen showed only a flat line, but the sounds didn't stop. Now everyone could hear them without the device's incomprehensible words, with a tone that seemed to pierce directly into their minds. At that moment, one of the soldiers, Corporal Dmitry Zakharov, who had been silent until now, suddenly aimed his rifle at Gurov. He said, "Major, haven't you had enough? Can't you see what's happening? We shouldn't be here." Gurov, calm but with sharp eyes, replied, "Lower your weapon, Dmitry. That's an order." But Zakharov, with a trembling voice, continued, "You don't understand. Moscow doesn't want us back. They knew what was hidden here. We're just lab rats." Zakharov, sweat dripping from his forehead, replied, "Before the mission, someone from General Staff told me. If we saw anything unusual, we should report directly. Not to you, but to them." Gurov was now certain their mission was part of a larger game, perhaps a conspiracy within the Soviet security agency, or even higher, in the Kremlin. He looked at the monk, still standing calmly in the corner. "What do you know? What is this wall? Why does Moscow care so much about it?" For the first time, the monk gave a faint smile. "You think this wall belongs to you? Or to the Chinese? It was here before all of you. Before all of us." He pointed to the glowing crack. "If you open it, you will release something neither you nor your masters can control." Major Anatoly Gurov stared at the wall, but his thoughts were elsewhere: Moscow, Peking, and the conspiracy Zakharov had mentioned. He couldn't take the risk. Opening the wall might reveal the mission's secrets, but at what cost? Gurov looked at the Tibetan monk standing in the shadows. "You said this wall is a lock. If we don't open it, what happens?" The monk replied in a calm but heavy voice, "You cannot stop it. Those who sent you knew this. But if you leave, you might still have time." Gurov paused for a moment. His instinct told him opening the wall was a mistake. He looked at his team, then said, "We're retreating. Right now. We're not opening this wall." Gurov pointed to Romanov. "Try to send a signal. If that doesn't work, we'll find our own way out." The team rushed toward the entrance corridor. The heartbeat-like sound still echoed in the chamber, but it seemed weaker now. The monk, following behind, said, "The wall sleeps, but it has awakened. They know you are here." Gurov, angry, demanded, "Who are they?" But the monk only shook his head and vanished into the darkness. When the team reached the surface, snow was still falling, but something had changed. Romanov suddenly stopped. "Major, look there." In the distance, through the snow, shadows were moving, figures that were neither monks nor local soldiers. Gurov lifted his night vision goggles. "Armed forces. Not ours. Maybe Chinese. Or worse." But before they could get far, the sound of a helicopter echoed in the sky. Romanov said in despair, "If they're ours, why didn't they answer my signal?" Gurov was now certain this mission was a trap from the start. Moscow, Peking, or perhaps a secret group within the Soviet security agency, had sent them to the monastery to test the wall, with no intention of rescuing them. Major Anatoly Gurov led his team down the narrow valley, but the unknown shadows they had seen in the distance were now closer. The sound of the helicopter in the sky had stopped, but this silence, instead of hope, heightened the sense of threat. Gurov knew their time was running out. Second Lieutenant Nikolai Romanov, still carrying the radio, suddenly said, "Major, I got a signal. It's weak, but it's not from Moscow." Gurov approached him. "Where's it from?" Romanov, hesitant, replied, "I don't know. The code, it's strange. Like no system I know." At that moment, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the valley. Ivanov, the young soldier, screamed and collapsed to the ground. Blood poured from his shoulder. Gurov dragged the team behind a rock and readied his weapon. "Cover me." Romanov and Zakharov fired, but the darkness and snow limited their visibility. From the fog, figures in dark uniforms emerged, neither Chinese soldiers nor Soviet forces. Gurov realized with horror that their masks bore no insignia or markings. Kuznetsov, in a weak voice, said, "These aren't from the Soviet security agency. They're not from Peking either." One of the attackers, who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward and spoke in Russian with a strange accent. "Major Gurov, did you open the wall?" Gurov replied calmly, "No." "And who are you?" The man gave a cold smile and said, "We are the ones who ensure the wall stays closed." At that very moment, the monastery's heartbeat-like sound rose again, deeper, more alive. The ground trembled, not like an earthquake, but as if the monastery itself had taken a breath. The attackers froze, as if they instinctively knew something had awakened. Gurov felt the sound wasn't coming from stone, but from something living, something now defending itself. Gurov took the chance. He lifted the wounded Ivanov onto his shoulder and the team sprinted toward the valley. But Kuznetsov suddenly stopped. "Major, we have to go back. We need to understand what's behind that wall." Gurov shouted, "No time!" But Kuznetsov couldn't resist his curiosity and started running back toward the monastery. Gurov's team, without Kuznetsov, barely escaped the valley. Romanov finally sent a signal to Moscow, but the response was chilling. Gurov's team does not exist. Operation OSM was never recorded. Gurov was now certain they were victims of a larger conspiracy. Major Gurov and his team headed toward one of the Soviet bases. Ivanov did not survive his wound and died along the way due to heavy bleeding. After 2 days of walking, they finally reached the base. Romanov and Zakharov returned to Moscow, but a few months later, they mysteriously disappeared. Kuznetsov was never found. Some rumors claimed he returned to the monastery and was hidden by the monks. Others believed he was abducted by the same unknown group. Gurov, who had disobeyed Moscow's orders, was exiled to Siberia. Years later, he was said to have spoken in a mental hospital about a wall that breathes, but no one took his words seriously. I, Thomas Kyer, reconstructed this story from documents anonymously sent to me. It is said these papers were stolen from Russian military archives, but there is no proof. The documents refer to an operation in 1973 at the Tibet-China border, an operation coded OSM with no official name. But when I think of the monastery, of Gurov and his team, I cannot help but ask myself if the wall is still there. Is it still sleeping?